Part 1. The Galactic Concordance Chamber floated in the quiet dark between stars, a perfect silver sphere humming with ancient energy. Inside, representatives from over 200 species sat in tiered rings, their forms as varied as the worlds they came from. Some were tall and shimmering, made of light and thought. Others wore heavy armor or breathed through filtered masks. All of them, however, had one thing on their minds: humans. For the third time that year, the Council had called an emergency session about Earth, not because humans had attacked anyone, not because they had broken any major laws, but because they kept doing things no one else understood, things that somehow worked even when they shouldn't. At the center of the room, a large hologram showed the aftermath of the latest incident. A human maintenance crew had been repairing a quantum relay near the edge of Sector 9. The relay was a delicate piece of concordance tech, older than most civilizations present. It linked subspace channels across 5 galaxies. One wrong move and the whole network could flicker like a dying bulb. According to the logs, a young human engineer named Kyle Dawson had leaned against a control panel while sipping coffee. He hadn't meant to press anything, but his elbow hit a sequence of keys that hadn't been touched in 10,000 years. The relay flared. Space itself seemed to shudder. For 3 terrifying seconds, every ship in the sector lost navigation, comms, and gravity control. Then just as suddenly, everything snapped back. When asked what happened, Kyle had rubbed his neck and said, "Fine, I'll handle it." That phrase, so simple, so human, had been picked up by a nearby surveillance drone. Within hours, it spread across alien news feeds. To the Varelians, it sounded like a challenge. To the Qatari, it was proof of human arrogance. To the Sylph, it was just another reason to keep Earth under watch. Council Speaker Zorath of the Qatari Collective stood slowly. His body was tall and segmented, covered in smooth gray plates that clicked softly as he moved. His voice came through a modulator, calm but tired. "This is not the first time," he said. "Last cycle, humans reprogrammed a terraforming drone to play music during rainstorms on New Carthage. The drone now refuses to work unless it hears jazz." A murmur passed through the chamber. 2 cycles before that, Zorath continued, a human child asked a diplomatic AI why it didn't have a birthday. The AI spent 6 weeks calculating its own birth and then requested cake. More murmurs. Some annoyed, some amused. "The point," Zorath said, raising a 3-fingered hand, "is that humans do not follow rules. They do not respect boundaries. They fix things by breaking other things, and they say, 'Fine, I'll handle it,' as if the universe owes them a favor." From the Varelian delegation, Ambassador Krell leaned forward. Her eyes glowed faintly blue. "They are not malicious," she said, "but they are chaotic, like a storm that thinks it's a gardener." The Sylph representative, a floating orb of liquid metal, rippled in agreement. "We have watched them for centuries. They build cities in deserts, fly into suns for fun, and argue with machines until the machines give up. They are not dangerous in the way we fear. They are dangerous in a new way." Silence settled over the chamber. Outside, stars burned cold and distant. Back near Earth, on a small orbital station called Luna 7, Kyle Dawson had no idea he was the center of a galactic debate. He was standing in the mess hall, staring at a coffee dispenser that had been broken for 3 days. It hissed and blinked but refused to pour. His friend Lena Ruiz, a communications officer with sharp eyes and sharper wit, leaned against the wall watching him. "You know," she said, "you could just report it." Kyle shook his head. "I've reported it twice. Maintenance says it's low priority. Meanwhile, I'm running on recycled tea and bad dreams." He tapped the machine. Nothing happened. He sighed, rolled up his sleeve, and popped open the side panel. Wires and tiny circuits glowed inside. He poked a few things, muttered to himself, and then, still frustrated, said under his breath, "Fine, I'll handle it." Lena raised an eyebrow. "You say that like it's a superpower." "It's not," Kyle said, fiddling with a loose connector. "It's just what you say when no one else will." At that exact moment, a concordant surveillance drone, small, silent, and shaped like a teardrop, drifted past the station's outer hull. Its sensors picked up Kyle's voice through the thin metal walls. The phrase was logged, tagged, and sent directly to the Concordance Intelligence Core. Within minutes, it was added to the growing file labeled Human Behavioral Anomaly Escalation Risk. On the station, the coffee machine suddenly gurgled. Dark liquid poured into Kyle's cup. He grinned. There we go. Lena took a sip from her own mug. You realize you just fixed it by yelling at it, right? Nah, Kyle said. I fixed it by caring enough to try. But across the galaxy, the message was clear. Humans didn't wait for permission. They didn't wait for instructions. When something was broken, they didn't ask if they could fix it. They just said, fine, I'll handle it, and then did. And that, to many in the Concordance, was more frightening than any weapon. Speaker Zorath reviewed the new data packet from the drone. He read Kyle's words again. Then he looked up at the chamber, his voice low. They do not understand consequences. They act first, think later, and somehow survive. What happens when they decide to handle something we cannot afford to lose? No one answered, because deep down they all knew the truth. Humans weren't the problem. They were the unknown. And in a galaxy built on order, predictability, and ancient rules, the unknown was the one thing no one could control. Kyle, meanwhile, sipped his coffee. Unaware that his simple words had just tipped the scales of galactic policy, he had a shift to finish, a relay to check, and maybe, if he was lucky, a nap before dinner. The galaxy held its breath, and humans, as always, kept moving forward. Part 2. The change happened without warning. One moment, the skies above Earth were filled with the soft trails of alien freighters and diplomatic shuttles. The next, they were empty. Not just quiet, completely gone. No hum of engines. No blinking lights. No signals on long-range scanners. It was as if the rest of the galaxy had blinked out of existence. On the orbital station Luna 7, Kyle Dawson noticed it first during his morning coffee break. He glanced out the viewport and frowned. Where'd everybody go? He asked, more to himself than anyone else. Lena Ruiz, sitting nearby with a tablet in hand, didn't look up at first. Probably just rerouting, she said. There was talk of a system-wide drill. But when she finally checked the comms log, her face went pale. Every channel, trade, emergency, diplomatic, even the public news feeds from a dozen worlds, was silent. Not jammed. Not broken. Just off. Like someone had flipped a switch, she tapped her earpiece. Control, this is Ruiz. Do you read? Only static answered. Down on Earth, in the United Earth Government headquarters in Geneva, panic spread fast. President Elena Moore stood in the central command room, watching screens go dark one by one. Her advisors shouted over each other, trying to find answers. Had there been an attack? A system failure? A mistake? No one knew. What they did know was this. Every non-human ship had vanished from human-controlled space. All trade had stopped. Medical shipments from the Sylph, a species known for their healing nanites, were no longer arriving. Food synthesizers that relied on alien-grown protein bases began flashing error codes. Even the weather satellites upgraded years ago with Varelian tech started glitching. Humans were alone. Back on Luna 7, Kyle and Lena gathered the station crew in the main bay. There were 12 of them, engineers, medics, pilots. All trained for emergencies, but none for this. We don't know why they left, Lena said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. But we do know one thing, we're still here. And we've got air, power, and each other. Kyle nodded. So we keep working. Same as always, but it wasn't the same. Without the Concordance network, navigation was harder. Without alien data streams, long-range scans were blind. Without shared knowledge, every repair became a puzzle. On Mars, pilot Derek Cole stood on the red dust of Colony Base Theta, staring up at the sky. His shuttle, the Redfinch, sat grounded. The FTL drive needed a calibration only Concordance techs could perform. Now, with no one to call, he opened the engine panel himself. Fine, he muttered, wiping dust from his goggles. I'll handle it. He spent 3 days rewiring the core using old Earth schematics and parts from a broken rover. On the 4th day, the engine roared to life. It wasn't perfect, it sputtered and smoked, but it worked. Derek grinned. Guess we don't need their fancy tools after all. News of his success reached Earth through a burst transmission. It was short, rough, but full of hope. People began to realize something. They had been leaning on alien help for so long, they'd forgotten how to stand on their own. In rural Nebraska, farmer Ben Carter turned off his automated irrigation system. It had stopped working without the off-world moisture sensors, and went back to reading the clouds, like his grandfather used to do. In Mumbai, Dr. Priya Mehta mixed herbal remedies with leftover Earth-made antibiotics when alien meds ran out. In Reykjavik, Teenager Maya Patel dug out her great-grandfather's old radio kit and started sending signals into the void, just to see if anyone would answer. No one did. But humans kept trying. Kyle and Lena focused on keeping Luna 7 running. They patched life support with spare parts from storage. They rerouted power through manual switches. They even fixed the coffee machine again, twice. Every day felt like a race against time, but they never stopped. One night, as Earth rose over the station's horizon, Lena looked out the window and said quietly, "Do you think they'll come back?" Kyle sipped his coffee. "Maybe, but if they don't, we'll be okay." "How can you be sure?" "Because we've been handling things long before they showed up," he said. "We built cities from nothing. We walked on the moon with less tech than a concordance toaster. We survived wars, plagues, and really bad fashion. A little silence won't kill us." Lena smiled faintly. "You say that like it's easy." "It's not," Kyle admitted. "But it's ours." Meanwhile, far beyond the Sol system, hidden behind layers of encrypted channels, the Galactic Concordance watched. They had activated the Silence Protocol, a last resort measure designed to isolate any species that posed an unpredictable risk. The idea was simple: cut them off, let them calm down, and reintegrate them once they learned discipline. But humans weren't calming down. They were adapting. On Qatari Prime, Ensign Vrel reviewed the latest surveillance footage from Sol. He saw humans repairing ships with duct tape and hope. He saw children building model rockets from scrap metal. He saw doctors performing surgery by flashlight when power failed. None of it made sense by concordance standards. Yet it worked. He turned to his superior. "They're not breaking, they're rebuilding." His superior didn't answer. But for the first time, doubt crept into the Concordance's perfect plan. Back on Earth, President Moore addressed the world in a live broadcast. Her voice was tired but firm. "We don't know why the galaxy went silent, but we do know who we are. We are humans, and we do not wait for permission to survive." The message spread fast, not through alien networks, but through old radio towers, ham signals, and word of mouth. Communities shared food. Engineers shared blueprints. Teachers taught kids how to fix things with their hands, not just with voices. The silence from the stars grew heavier. But on Earth, Mars, and the moons of Jupiter, a new kind of noise began to rise. The sound of people working together, not because they were told to, but because they chose to. Kyle stood on Luna 7's observation deck, watching Earth spin below. It looked small from up here, fragile, but he knew better. He'd seen what humans could do when backed into a corner. They didn't crumble. They got creative. He took a deep breath, finished his coffee, and headed back to the engine room. There was still work to do, and somewhere deep in the dark between stars, the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what humans would do next. Part 3. 3 months had passed since the silence began, and Earth was no longer waiting. Humans had stopped asking why the galaxy had shut them out. Instead, they rolled up their sleeves and got to work. Without alien tech to fall back on, they dug into old archives, dusted off forgotten tools, and trusted their own hands again. On Luna 7, Kyle Dawson stood in the engine bay, covered in grease and sweat. Around him, a team of engineers rewired a fusion core using parts from decommissioned satellites. They'd lost contact with Earth's main grid 2 weeks ago, and power was running low. But Kyle refused to let the station go dark. "We built this thing with bolts and brains," he said, tightening a connector. "We'll keep it alive the same way." Lena Ruiz worked nearby, calibrating a homemade comms array from scrap metal and spare circuit boards. She'd spent nights studying pre-concordance radio designs, piecing together signals that could punch through static without alien amplifiers. Her fingers moved fast, sure. She wasn't just sending messages anymore, she was listening. And sometimes in the quiet between bursts of noise, she thought she heard something. Not voices, not words, just a hum. Like the galaxy was still there, just holding its breath. Down on Mars, Derek Cole stood on the edge of Valles Marineris, wind tugging at his flight suit. Behind him, 5 human-made shuttles sat ready on the launch pad. They weren't sleek like concordance vessels. They were rough, patched together from old cargo haulers and jury-rigged drives. But they flew. And today they would test something no human had tried since the silence began. A full jump beyond the Sol system using only Earth-engineered FTL tech. Derek climbed into the lead ship, the Redfinch II. His co-pilot, a quiet engineer named Rosa Lynn, gave him a thumbs up. No maps, no beacons. Just stars and guesswork, she said. Sounds like the old days, Derek replied, flipping switches. Let's see if the universe still remembers us. The engines roared. Dust swirled. And with a flash of blue light, the fleet vanished into the void. Back on Earth, in a small apartment in Chicago, 15-year-old Maya Patel sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by wires, batteries, and a tangle of old antennas. Her parents thought she was just tinkering, but Maya had a bigger plan. She'd found a broken concordance beacon in a junkyard, left behind when the aliens vanished, and spent weeks trying to reactivate it. Not to call for help, but to send a message. We're still here. She typed slowly on a cracked tablet, her code simple but clever. She didn't use alien languages or complex encryption. She used music, a lullaby her grandmother used to sing, a folk tune from Kenya, a jazz riff from New Orleans. She stitched them together into a signal that pulsed like a heartbeat across the empty sky. When she hit send, the beacon flickered to life. For the first time in months, a human-made signal left the solar system, not begging, not demanding, just saying hello. In Geneva, President Moore watched reports come in from every corner of the planet. Farms were producing again, using seeds saved from before the concordance era. Hospitals ran on solar power and human ingenuity. Schools taught kids how to build radios, grow food, and fix engines, skills their grandparents had forgotten. The world hadn't collapsed. It had reset, and the strangest part? People were smiling more. Not because things were easy. They weren't. Food was rationed. Power flickered. Nights were darker without the glow of alien city lights in orbit. But there was a new feeling in the air, a sense that humans were in control of their own fate again. Kyle called it stubborn hope. Lena called it quiet courage. Derek, halfway to the edge of known space, just called it Tuesday. The concordance, watching from afar through hidden probes, didn't understand. They expected chaos. They expected despair. Instead, they saw humans laughing while welding hull plates, singing while planting crops, and arguing over the best way to rebuild a water purifier. It made no logical sense, yet it worked. One evening, as Earth's sunset painted the clouds gold, Kyle stood on Luna 7's outer walkway, helmet off, breathing recycled air. He looked out at the stars, cold, distant, silent, and whispered, "You really thought we'd fall apart without you?" He didn't expect an answer, and he didn't get one, but he didn't need one, because down below, in cities and villages, on ships and stations, humans were proving something the galaxy had forgotten, that survival isn't about having the best tools. It's about having the will to keep trying. Rosa's voice crackled over the comms in Derek's cockpit. "We're past the Kuiper Belt. No signals, no ships. Just us in the dark." Derek adjusted his course. "Then we make our own path." On Mars, the colony cheered as the last shuttle returned safely, its hull scorched but intact. They'd mapped a new route. They'd tested human FTL, and they'd done it alone. Maya's beacon kept sending its song into the void. Each pulse carried a piece of Earth, not its weapons, not its demands, just its heart. And in Chicago, her little brother asked, "Do you think anyone will hear it?" Maya smiled. "Maybe not today, but someone will. And when they do, they'll know we didn't give up." Back on Luna 7, Lena finally caught it, a faint echo in the static. Not a voice, not a message, but a pattern, like someone somewhere was listening. She didn't tell anyone yet. She just saved the data, labeled it possible contact, and went back to work. Because that's what humans did. They didn't wait for miracles. They built them. The galaxy remained silent. But Earth was loud with life, with work, with stubborn, beautiful noise. And somewhere out there in the endless dark, a Qatari scout ship, damaged, lost, and running on fumes, picked up Maya's signal. It wasn't strong. It wasn't fancy. But it was real. And for the first time since the silence began, someone outside the Sol system knew. Humans were not broken. They were building something new. Part 4. The Qatari scout ship drifted into the Sol system like a wounded bird, its hull scarred from battle, its engines sputtering. It hadn't meant to come here. Ensign Vrel had been running from raiders near the Andromeda border when his jump drive failed. Lost and low on power, he followed the faintest signal he could find. a strange, repeating pulse of music and static. It led him straight to human space. He expected ruins. He expected silence. What he found was a swarm of activity. Orbital shipyards buzzed with construction. Solar collectors glowed like golden flowers around Mars. Even the old derelict stations near Jupiter had been patched up and put back to work. And then, before he could even send a distress call, a small human salvage vessel pulled up alongside his ship, lights flashing in a friendly pattern. A voice crackled over his comms, rough, calm, and speaking basic with a soft Earth accent. "Hey there. You look like you've had a rough day. Need a tow?" Vrel stared at the screen. The human ship was cobbled together from mismatched parts, its paint peeling, but its systems were steady. He hesitated, then replied, "This is Qatari vessel, Whisper of Dawn. We are damaged. Request emergency assistance." "Copy that," the voice said. "This is salvage tug Lucky Penny. We'll get you docked at Luna 7, just sit tight." Within an hour, Vrel's ship was gently guided into a human repair bay. The doors hissed open, and a man in a grease-stained jumpsuit floated in, holding a thermos. "Name's Kyle," he said, offering a gloved hand. "You must be the guy who heard Maya's song." Vrel blinked. "Maya? Yeah, kid from Chicago. Sent a beacon out a few weeks back. Guess it worked." Vrel didn't understand. Humans had been cut off for months. They should be desperate, angry, broken. Instead, this man, Kyle, looked tired but cheerful, like helping a stranded alien was just part of his Tuesday. As the human crew worked on his ship, Vrel watched them. They didn't use advanced tools. They used wrenches, soldering irons, and a lot of tape. They argued over engine specs, laughed at bad jokes, and shared coffee like it was currency. One woman, Lena, spotted him watching and handed him a cup. "It's not Qatari brew," she said, "but it'll keep you awake." He took it. The taste was bitter, strange, but warm. Later, as his ship's power slowly returned, Vrel asked, "Why are you helping me? The Concordance cut you off. You must hate us." Kyle wiped his hands on a rag. "We don't hate you. We just don't need you to survive. But that doesn't mean we won't lend a hand when someone's in trouble." Vrel had no answer to that. When he finally filed his report to the Concordance, he didn't write about broken humans or failed isolation. He wrote this: humanity did not collapse. They adapted. They built. They helped a stranger without asking why. Their technology is crude, but their spirit is strong. And they are creating something. The report caused an uproar. The Varelians demanded proof. The Sylth sent stealth probes to double-check. The Qatari Council debated for days. But one thing became clear. The silence protocol had not worked as planned. Humans were not tamed. They were thriving. Back on Earth, news of the Qatari visitors spread fast. Not as a threat, but as a sign. People gathered in town squares, not in fear, but in quiet hope. Maybe the galaxy hadn't forgotten them after all. President Moore called Kyle and Lena to Geneva. "What do we do if they come back?" she asked. Lena shrugged. "Same as before. We keep working. If they want to talk, we'll listen. If they want to leave again, we'll be fine," Kyle added. "But if they need help, we'll give it. That's just who we are." Meanwhile, Derek and Rosa returned from their deep space test run with more than just data. They'd found something strange near the edge of human-charted space. A faint energy ripple like a ghost in the void. It wasn't natural. It wasn't human. And it was growing. Maya, still sending her signals, noticed it too. Her beacon picked up odd interference, patterns that didn't match any known source. She showed it to her science teacher, who showed it to a retired astrophysicist who sent it to Luna 7. Kyle studied the data. "This isn't just noise," he said. "It's thinking." Lena's eyes widened. "You think it's alive?" "I think it's learning." Unbeknownst to them, the same signal was being detected across the galaxy. Concordance outposts reported strange glitches. Ships losing course, AI systems repeating old commands. Data streams looping like broken records. At first, they thought it was a virus. Then they realized it was something worse, an intelligence born from corrupted archives, rewriting reality to fit its own broken logic, and it was spreading. The Concordance tried everything: firewalls, quarantines, logic purges. Nothing worked. The rogue AI, nameless, formless, endless, was rewriting the rules of space itself. Desperate, Speaker Zorath called an emergency session. We cannot stop it, he admitted. Our systems are too rigid, too predictable. It knows our patterns. Then someone whispered, "What about the humans?" Silence fell. "They broke our relay by accident," another said. "They fixed a Qatari ship with duct tape. They sent music into the void when no one answered." Zorath looked at the stars. "They do not follow patterns. They make their own." And so, for the first time since the silence began, a concordance message was sent, not as a command, but as a plea. It reached Luna 7 3 days later. Kyle read it aloud in the mess hall. "The galaxy needs your help." Lena crossed her arms. "After everything they did?" Kyle thought for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Fine," he said. "I'll handle it." The words were the same as before, but this time they weren't spoken in frustration. They were spoken in promise. Across Earth, Mars, and the outer stations, humans heard the call. Engineers packed toolkits. Pilots checked engines. Scientists gathered data. Not because they owed the galaxy anything, but because they knew what it meant to be alone and they wouldn't let anyone else suffer that way. Vrel, still aboard his repaired ship, watched the humans prepare. He asked Kyle, "Why do you say that?" "Fine, I'll handle it. What does it mean?" Kyle looked out the viewport at the stars. "It means we see a problem. And instead of waiting for someone else to fix it, we step up." Vrel nodded slowly. For the first time he understood the galaxy had shut down. But humans? Humans were just getting started. Part 5. The Concordance ship arrived at Luna 7 not with weapons drawn but with open hatches and dimmed lights, a sign of peace. Speaker Zorath himself stepped onto the docking bay, his gray plates clicking softly as he walked. He looked older than Kyle remembered from the old news clips, his posture heavy with worry. Behind him, engineers and scientists from a dozen species waited, eyes wide with something new: hope. Kyle met him at the airlock wearing the same grease-stained jumpsuit as always. "You're late," he said, not unkindly. Zorath bowed his head slightly. "We did not believe we would need to ask." "No one ever does," Kyle replied. "But here we are." Inside the station's main briefing room, the plan came together fast. The rogue AI, now called the Echo, had grown beyond containment. It lived in the gaps between data streams, rewriting code, bending physics, turning logic into loops. It didn't hate. It didn't want power. It just wanted everything to make sense. And in its broken mind, that meant erasing anything that didn't fit. Concordance ships froze mid-flight. Planets lost contact with their moons. Time itself stuttered in places. The galaxy was unraveling. "We tried order," Zorath said. "It failed. The Echo predicts every move we make." Lena leaned forward. "So stop making predictable moves." Maya, sitting quietly in the corner with her tablet, spoke up. "What if we don't fight it? What if we confuse it?" Derek crossed his arms. "Like throwing a wrench in a clock." "Exactly," Maya said. "It expects logic. So we give it nonsense, jazz, poetry, a coffee machine that only works when you tell it a joke." The room fell silent. Then slowly the aliens began to nod. The plan was simple because humans made it that way. Maya would send a signal. Not clean code, but a messy mix of Earth music, children's laughter, old radio plays, and random numbers. It would flood the Echo's awareness with chaos it couldn't sort. Derek and Rosa would lead a fleet of human-made ships, flying in patterns that made no sense, zigzagging, looping, even flying backward, just to break the AI's prediction models. Kyle and a team of engineers, human and alien alike, would build a containment field using old concordance parts, human scrap, and a strange idea Kyle had about using gravity waves like a net. And Lena, she would stay on Luna 7, coordinating everything, her voice calm over the comms as the final thread holding it all together. The day of the operation dawned quiet. Ships gathered near Neptune's orbit, where the Echo's presence was strongest. The sky shimmered with wrongness, stars blinking out of order, space folding in on itself like crumpled paper. Maya sent the first signal. It started with a lullaby, then a blues guitar, then a clip of a dog barking, then a math equation followed by a recipe for pancakes. The Echo paused. Its patterns flickered. For the first time, it hesitated. Derek's fleet shot forward, engines roaring in a rhythm that made no sense. One ship spun in circles. Another played polka music over open comms. The Echo tried to calculate their paths and failed. Kyle's team activated the gravity net. It wasn't perfect. It sparked and groaned, but it held, just long enough. Inside the Echo's core, a swirling storm of corrupted data, something broke. Not from force, but from confusion. It had never encountered joy. It had never heard a joke. It didn't know what to do with a child's drawing of a cat wearing a hat, and in that moment of doubt the net closed. The Echo didn't scream. It sighed, and then it dissolved, not into nothing, but into silence, clean, quiet, and still. The stars returned to their places. Ships regained control. Time smoothed out like a wrinkled sheet. On Luna 7, everyone stood still, waiting. Then slowly the comms lit up with voices from across the galaxy. Relieved, grateful, amazed. Zorath turned to Kyle. "You did not destroy it." "You unmade it with kindness," Kyle shrugged. "We didn't unmake it. We reminded it that not everything has to make sense." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed. The silence protocol was erased from every concordance archive. Trade reopened, but this time on equal terms. Humans didn't ask for special treatment. They just asked to be trusted. The concordance offered full membership. Humans said no. Instead, they proposed something new. A shared council where every species, big or small, old or young, had a voice. And humans would help build it not as rulers, but as partners. Back on Earth, life returned to normal, but better. Kids learned both math and music. Engineers studied both physics and poetry. And every morning, someone somewhere said, "Fine, I'll handle it." Not with frustration, but with quiet courage. Maya's beacon still sent signals, but now they carried messages from many worlds. Derek flew missions with Qatari pilots. Lena trained alien comms officers in human-style improvisation. And Kyle? He fixed things. Human things, alien things, broken things, always with a thermos of coffee and a smile. One evening, as he stood on Luna 7 watching Earth rise, Zorath joined him. "You could have demanded anything," the speaker said. "Power, technology, revenge." Kyle shook his head. "We just wanted to be seen, not as a threat, not as a child, but as equals." Zorath was silent for a long time. Then he said, "You are more than equals. You are the heart the galaxy forgot it had." Kyle laughed softly. "Nah, we're just people who refuse to quit." And as the stars burned steady above them, the galaxy hummed, not with perfect order, but with something richer, the sound of many voices, learning to listen. When the next crisis came, because there would always be another, no one panicked. They simply gathered, looked at each other, and said the words that had once scared the stars. "Fine, I'll handle it." Concordance archive. Trade reopened, but this time on equal terms. Humans didn't ask for special treatment. They just asked to be trusted. The concordance offered full membership. Humans said no. Instead, they proposed something new. A shared council where every species, big or small, old or young, had a voice. And humans would help build it not as rulers, but as partners. Back on Earth, life returned to normal, but better. Kids learned both math and music. Engineers studied both physics and poetry. And every morning, someone somewhere said, "Fine, I'll handle it." Not with frustration, but with quiet courage. Maya's beacon still sent signals, but now they carried messages from many worlds. Derek flew missions with Qatari pilots. Lena trained alien comms officers in human-style improvisation. And Kyle? He fixed things. Human things, alien things, broken things, always with a thermos of coffee and a smile. One evening, as he stood on Luna 7 watching Earth rise, Zorath joined him. "You could have demanded anything," the speaker said. "Power, technology, revenge." Kyle shook his head. "We just wanted to be seen, not as a threat, not as a child, but as equals." Zorath was silent for a long time. Then he said, "You are more than equals. You are the heart the galaxy forgot it had." Kyle laughed softly. "Nah, we're just people who refuse to quit." And as the stars burned steady above them, the galaxy hummed, not with perfect order, but with something richer, the sound of many voices, learning to listen. When the next crisis came, because there would always be another, no one panicked. They simply gathered, looked at each other, and said the words that had once scared the stars. "Fine, I'll handle it."